Maya Ellis, 15, quiet but bright, the sort of kid teachers described as polite and responsible, was last seen on the school's annual spring picnic, a day meant to celebrate the end of exams. Her parents had signed the permission slip without hesitation. Everyone trusted the tradition. The buses, the chaperones, the field trip destination. It all followed years of routine. But that year, something was off. Please, if you find this story interesting, please do well to share, comment, and subscribe. Students reported a strange tension among the staff, whispered conversations, tight smiles. Teachers checking head counts more often than usual. Most brushed it off as end-of-year stress. Maya hadn't. She texted her friend during the picnic. "Someone new here? Says he's a teacher." Weird vibe. Her friend didn't see the message until hours later. When the buses returned at 5:12 p.m., Maya wasn't on them. At first, the school thought she'd boarded another bus. The buses thought she'd stayed behind for cleanup. Her parents were told she was probably mixed up in the count. Nothing more. But when an hour passed, then too, panic unfurled through the school like a rippling shockwave. Witnesses described a man in his 30s wearing a staff lanyard. No one recognized him, but school events often included new aides or substitute teachers, so no one questioned him. He kept mostly to the edges, helping set up tables, carrying boxes, speaking quietly with a few students. The problem? The school had no record of hiring or assigning any new staff to the picnic, and several students recalled seeing Maya walking with him near the woods on the edge of the park. 48 hours into the investigation, police received an anonymous tip. Check the picnic grounds. The shed behind the old baseball field. What they found was strange. Inside the shed, there were traces of food wrappers from the picnic, a half-finished bottle of water, and a torn corner of the school's visitor badge, its print smeared by sweat. But that wasn't the twist. The twist was that footprints near the shed showed two different shoe sizes, one clearly belonging to the suspect, the other too small to be Maya's. Someone else had been involved. Detectives soon linked the anonymous tip to a burner phone. The call was made from within 3 blocks of the school. That narrowed their search to someone familiar with the students' routines, the layout of the campus, and the timing of the buses. Someone pretending to be a teacher, or someone who used to be one. Interviews with former staff revealed a name, Daniel Hart, dismissed the previous year after multiple complaints about boundary-pushing behavior with students. The school had buried the details to avoid a scandal. But here was the part nobody expected. Maya wasn't his first attempt. She was the first who tried to run. On the 4th night, just as hope began to crumble, police found Maya, disoriented, dehydrated, but alive, hidden in an abandoned maintenance tunnel 2 miles from the picnic grounds. She told investigators she'd escaped when Hart left her tied near the shed. She'd run until she found the tunnel, hiding whenever she heard footsteps. The smaller footprints near the shed, they belonged to another student Hart had tried to coerce into leaving the picnic earlier, one who panicked and fled, then secretly phoned the anonymous tip to stay out of the spotlight. Maya's rescue stunned the community. The school faced backlash for ignoring warning signs. Her parents grappled with guilt for trusting a system that failed her, and the town was left shaken by how easily an impostor could blend into the safe world of a school outing. Maya didn't return to school right away. She avoided crowds, flinched at sudden sounds, and struggled to sleep. But her parents stayed close, therapy helped, and over time she reclaimed pieces of the life Hart tried to take from her. The investigation ended with Hart's arrest, caught on traffic cameras, heading out of state. The school implemented new security procedures, including stricter staff verification and student check-ins. Life moved on slowly, cautiously, forever changed. And yet, to this day, when anyone from that school hears the word spring picnic, they think of Maya's last message, the warning no one saw in time. That's where this story begins. In a place so peaceful, danger didn't make sense. Until it did. The spring picnic wasn't optional. Every year, the entire sophomore class of Ridgeview High was bused to Timberline Regional Park, a sprawling woodland reserve with picnic shelters, trails, and an old baseball diamond. Teachers joked it was controlled chaos, but students loved the break from classrooms and deadlines. Maya Ellis wasn't the adventurous type, but she loved the picnic. She packed her own lunch, brought a paperback novel in case things got boring, and braided her hair that morning because her mom said it made her look sunny. Her friends teased her lovingly when she arrived with a tote bag full of snacks and hand wipes. "Relax, Maya," her friend Lila laughed. "It's a picnic, not a wilderness expedition." But Maya noticed something the others didn't. Before the buses departed, she saw a man talking quietly with Ms. Rowell, one of the English teachers. He was holding a Ridgeview ID lanyard. He wasn't smiling, and he kept looking around as if memorizing the students. "Who's that?" Maya had whispered. "No clue," Lila replied, shrugging. "Maybe a new sub? Maybe." But something about him stuck with Maya. By late afternoon, the picnic was in full swing. Volleyball, music, groups sitting on blankets. Teachers walked around with clipboards doing periodic head counts. The man with the lanyard drifted along the edges, helping carry food containers, chatting with students only when spoken to. His presence was quiet. Too quiet. At 2:14 p.m., Maya texted Lila, who'd gone off with another group. "That new teacher here? He's weird. Keep watching the woods." No reply came. Lila didn't hear her phone. Later, Maya would think about that unanswered message over and over. Around 3 p.m., the man approached Maya while she was refilling her water bottle at a station near the tree line. "You're Maya, right?" he asked, as if reading the name from thin air. Maya froze. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Could you help me carry the leftover supplies? The others are busy at the grill." She hesitated. She didn't know him, but he had a staff lanyard, and she didn't want to seem rude. "Sure," she said softly. They walked toward the shed behind the baseball field, away from the crowd. That was the last time anyone saw her with the group. At 5:12 p.m., the buses left the park. Maya wasn't on any of them. Teachers blamed miscounts. Chaperones assumed she was on another bus. The office staff assured her parents it was almost certainly a mix-up. But by 7 p.m., when Maya still wasn't home and calls went straight to voicemail, reality settled over the Ellis household like a heavy fog. Her mother's voice trembled as she called the police. Her father drove straight to the school, frantic and furious. By 9 p.m., search teams were combing Timberline Park with flashlights. Something had gone terribly wrong. When investigators asked teachers about new staff members on the field trip, the reaction was unanimous confusion. There were no new hires. We had no substitutes assigned. No one with a lanyard was added to the roster. But several students, more than a dozen, described the same man. Tall, early 30s, brown hair, wearing a Ridgeview ID. He even helped load equipment onto the bus. The ID card later discovered in the shed was not produced by the school. It was a high-quality fake. This man had blended into the school events seamlessly. And now he, like Maya, had vanished. 2 days passed. Media coverage exploded. Local girl missing after school picnic community demands answers from Ridgeview High. Maya's parents could barely speak on camera. Her mother clutched her daughter's favorite yellow sweater during interviews. On the second night, at 10:43 p.m., an anonymous call reached the police tip line. "Check the shed behind the baseball field. He left stuff there." The voice was thin, trembling, clearly young. When detectives searched the shed, they found a half-empty water bottle, snack wrappers from picnic leftovers, a dirty rope with frayed ends, a torn piece of a Ridgeview visitor badge, footprints, 2 sets. One was obviously the suspect's. The other was smaller than Maya's size 7 sneakers. Who was that second person? Detectives dug into school records, staff turnover, and past complaints. One name surfaced again and again in hushed internal emails. Daniel Hart, a former teaching assistant. Quiet, reserved, dismissed the previous year after allegations of inappropriate conversations with students. The school had quietly let him go to avoid publicity. Hart's personnel file contained a photograph. It matched every witness's description of the man at the picnic. But there was more. 3 weeks before the picnic, Hart had been seen loitering near the school, telling security he was visiting old colleagues. They escorted him out. There was no follow-up. He had been planning something. The second set of footprints puzzled investigators, until a breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. On day 3, a sophomore named Carson Miller fainted during questioning at school. His friends admitted he'd been acting strange since the picnic. When detectives spoke to him privately, Carson broke down. "I didn't mean to leave her," he sobbed. "He tried to get me to go with him first. I said no and ran. I should have done something. I should have told someone." Carson was the anonymous caller. He'd been terrified of getting in trouble for not reporting the attempt earlier. He described the man convincing Maya to walk with him, how the man had looked furious when Carson fled. The second set of footprints was his. Meanwhile, out in Timberline Park, alone in dense woods stretching for miles, Maya was fighting to stay alive. She later described it like this: "He tied my wrists and left me in the shed. I think he heard someone coming because he suddenly grabbed something and ran. I waited until the noise faded. Then I rubbed the rope against a nail on the wall. It took forever. My wrists were bleeding. When I got free, I didn't know where he went. I just ran." She ran until her lungs burned, slipping into a thick patch of forest behind a service building. She found a maintenance tunnel beneath the old water treatment pipe, dark, cold, hidden. She stayed there for 3 nights. No food, little water. Listening to distant footsteps she prayed weren't Hart's. Every rustle in the woods made her flinch. Every sound of wind felt like danger. She slept in 5-minute bursts. What kept her going, she said later, was imagining her mother's voice calling her home. On the 4th night, search dogs picked up a fading scent trail near the maintenance area. At 2:21 a.m., officers found her crouched in the tunnel, shivering, exhausted. Hands scraped raw, eyes swollen from crying. "Maya, it's okay," an officer whispered gently. "You're safe now." She couldn't stand at first. When they wrapped her in a blanket, she collapsed into sobs. The entire town exhaled for the first time in days. News cameras captured her parents rushing into the hospital, their faces breaking open with relief. But the story wasn't over. Traffic cameras finally caught Hart's license plate, a silver sedan heading out of the county the night Maya disappeared. Police intercepted him 2 states away at a motel. In his car they found another fake school ID, a map of parks and public school timelines, a notebook filled with student names, including Maya's. He'd been planning more than one attempt. Hart showed no remorse when arrested, but his expression changed when detectives mentioned Maya had survived. Shock, then anger. It was clear he never expected her to escape. The community demanded accountability. Ridgeview High faced intense scrutiny for ignoring early reports about Hart. Policies were overhauled. New staff verification procedures, mandatory ID scanning, phase out of unsupervised off-campus school events, panic alert check-ins for students during field trips. Maya returned home after a week in the hospital. She didn't go back to school immediately. Crowds terrified her. Loud noises made her jump. She slept with the lights on. Therapy helped her reclaim her voice. One day, months later, she asked her mom, "Why did he choose me?" Her mom held her tightly, answering through tears, "Because he underestimated you." And he was wrong. Documentaries later framed Maya's story as a tale of tragedy narrowly turned to hope. But to Maya, the truth was deeper. It wasn't the escape alone that saved her. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a chance. It was the moment something inside her refused to give up. The moment she saw a nail in the shed wall and thought, "I will not die here." It was her endurance in the tunnel, her courage to run, her determination to survive long enough for someone to find her, and the anonymous call from a frightened boy who finally couldn't carry his secret anymore. All these small decisions and moments braided together into the lifeline that pulled her back. A simple text, ignored, overlooked, and nearly fatal. But Maya lived. And that, after everything, is the part of the story she chooses to hold on to. The morning after Maya was found, Ridgeview Hospital became a quiet war zone of reporters camping outside, detectives coming and going, and nurses gently intercepting anyone who tried to slip into her room. Inside room 214, Maya slept with her fingers curled around the sleeve of her mother's sweater, as if afraid it might vanish if she let go. Her face was pale, lips cracked from dehydration. But she was warm, safe, breathing. Her father sat at the foot of the bed, staring at nothing, replaying the last 4 days like a nightmare reel. He whispered things to himself, prayers, guilt, the kind of promises parents make only when they felt the edge of losing everything. That morning, Maya woke slowly, blinking under soft hospital lighting. Her first words were barely audible. "Is he gone?" Her mother brushed her hair back. "He can't hurt you anymore," she whispered. "You're safe, sweetheart." But safety had become a strange, unfamiliar sensation. Daniel Hart refused to speak for the first 12 hours after his arrest. Detective Alvarez entered the room with a recorder and a thick case folder, her posture straight and patient. Hart sat handcuffed, staring at his reflection in the two-way mirror with a calm, eerie stillness. "You know she lived," Alvarez said gently. Hart tilted his head. "She's alive." Something flickered across his face, disbelief, then something harsher, sharper. "That's impossible," he muttered. "She shouldn't have." He stopped. Alvarez watched him, her expression unreadable. "You underestimated her," she said. He clenched his jaw, a twitch of irritation breaking through. Hart finally leaned back in his chair. "She wasn't the one," he murmured. Alvarez paused. "What do you mean by that?" But Hart only smiled, slow and hollow. A smile that suggested unfinished plans. A smile that made every investigator in the building shift uncomfortably. This wasn't over. Not entirely. 2 weeks after returning home, Maya began having dreams, dark tunnels, footsteps behind her, the snap of rope. In some dreams, she never escaped. Her therapist, Dr. Hahn, gave her small assignments, grounding exercises, journaling, deep breathing. But what helped most were the quiet moments, sitting on the porch with her dad sipping hot chocolate, or helping her mom water the garden, because routine felt like a rope that tied her back to normal life. Still, one piece of guilt lingered. "Carson should have told someone," she whispered one night. "If he'd said something sooner, maybe." Her mother took her hands. "Maya, you ran. You survived. Carson was scared, and he made the call that saved your life. None of this is on you." But guilt isn't logical. It clings. Carson struggled too. He avoided the hallways, avoided eye contact, flinched whenever his phone buzzed. His anonymous call had saved the investigation, but it had also trapped him in a loop of what-ifs. What if he'd shouted? What if he'd chased Hart instead of running? What if Maya hadn't escaped? He finally asked to see Maya. When he visited, he barely stepped through the doorway before tears blurred his vision. "I'm so sorry," he choked. "I should've. Maya reached for his hand. "You did enough," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "You saved me." That moment stitched something broken between them. Two kids caught in something far larger than either could understand. As fall approached, the case prepared for court. Hart faced multiple charges: kidnapping, attempted abduction, assault, false impersonation of educational staff, endangerment of minors. But prosecutors uncovered something deeper. Notes, maps, student schedules. Hart had been watching the school for months. And Maya wasn't random. He'd circled her name twice in his notebook. Why? That question chilled investigators. 6 months after the picnic, Maya sat in a courtroom with her parents, hands shaking slightly in her lap. Hart entered, flanked by officers. He avoided her gaze at first. But when he finally looked her direction, Maya did something she hadn't done since the day she escaped. She looked back. For a full, cold moment, Hart blinked, surprised. He expected fear. He didn't get it. Maya later admitted her heart was pounding painfully, but she didn't look away. She told Dr. Hahn afterward, "If I looked away, he'd still have power over me. I don't want that." The trial was long, grueling, and filled with details Maya wasn't allowed to hear directly. But Hart was found guilty on all major counts. He would never see the outside world again. Spring returned, 1 year after the picnic. Ridgeview High held a small, quiet ceremony honoring Maya's courage and resilience. She didn't want a crowd, so the event was limited to close friends, teachers, and the search and rescue team. When Maya walked onto the school lawn, students clapped softly. Not out of spectacle, but respect. Lila hugged her. Carson stood beside her. Teachers approached with sincere, remorseful apologies. Maya smiled, a real one, for the first time in months. Later that evening, she stood alone near the edge of the field where the buses usually parked, listening to the wind move through the leaves. The world was still. She breathed deeply. The woods didn't scare her anymore. They no longer held her fear. Just memories she had survived. People often asked her later, "How did you do it? How did you survive those 4 days?" Maya would think of a nail in the shed, the silence of the tunnel, the echo of footsteps she hid from, the determination that rose in her like fire when she realized no one was coming unless she stayed alive long enough to be found. Her answer was always the same. "I didn't survive because I was brave. I survived because I wasn't ready for my story to end." And every year, when the school announces the spring picnic, a quiet ripple moves through the community. Not fear, not sorrow. Respect for the girl whose courage turned a tragedy into a story of survival. The first night Maya spent in the hospital felt strangely quiet, almost too gentle compared to the terror she had endured. Machines hummed steadily, blankets were warm, and her mother never let go of her hand. But even comfort had its sharp edges. Every time her eyes fluttered open, she expected to see a dark tunnel ceiling above her or hear the rustle of footsteps in the woods. Instead, she heard her father softly whisper her name. "Maya, you're okay. You're here." She wasn't sure she believed it. By morning, the hallway outside her room was a blur of uniforms, hushed footsteps, and the steady thrum of voices. Nurses checked vitals. Detectives waited patiently to speak with her, and her parents hovered in the soft fog of relief and exhaustion. When she finally woke fully, sunlight spilling in through the blinds, she blinked up at her mother's face. "Is he gone?" Maya whispered. Her mother's voice broke. "Yes, sweetheart. He can't come near you again." But Maya noticed the way her mother looked toward the door, as if half expecting someone to appear. Fear doesn't vanish overnight. It lingers. Hundreds of miles away, in an interrogation room with buzzing fluorescent lights, Daniel Hart sat motionless, his cuffed hands resting like dead weight on the metal table. He didn't look dangerous, just tired, unimposing, ordinary. But the ordinariness was what made him so terrifying. Detective Alvarez stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. "She survived," she said, watching him closely. For the first time since his arrest, Hart blinked. "That's not possible," he murmured, as if talking to himself. "She shouldn't have." His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching beneath the skin. Alvarez leaned forward. "She did. And you're going to answer everything you planned." Hart didn't reply, but the chilling smirk that curled across his lips said enough. He hadn't intended for Maya to live. He hadn't intended to be caught. For weeks after leaving the hospital, Maya avoided the back windows of the house, afraid of seeing shadows that weren't there. She slept with a lamp on, and even daylight carried a brittle uneasiness. Yet she tried to wash dishes with her mom, tried to watch movies with her dad, tried to pretend that ordinary life fit again. But the world didn't feel safe, not yet. Her therapist, Dr. Hahn, encouraged small steps. "You survived. Now your life is yours again," she said during one session. But survival and living were two different mountains. Late at night, Maya sometimes sat awake, squeezing her blanket, whispering to herself, "I'm here. I'm here. I'm here." Reassurance came slowly. Carson Miller hadn't spoken to anyone since the day Maya came home. He barely made it through classes, drifting through hallways with red-rimmed eyes and a guilt too big for his 14-year-old shoulders. He'd been the one Hart tried to lure first. He'd been the one who ran. He'd been the one who waited too long before making the anonymous call. One afternoon, trembling and pale, he showed up at the Ellis house. When Maya opened the door, he froze, guilt swallowing his words. "Maya," his voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I should have told someone. I should have." Maya stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. "You help save me." Her words broke him open. Tears spilled down his cheeks. For the first time since the picnic, the weight on his chest eased. And for the first time since her rescue, Maya felt less alone. Two victims of the same man. Two survivors of the same storm. Months passed. Leaves turned gold, then brown, then fell away entirely as winter crept in. And with it came the trial. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood polish and tension. Reporters waited outside like hungry wolves, but inside, everything felt muted. Voices low, footsteps quiet. Maya sat between her parents, heart thudding as Hart was escorted in wearing shackles. He didn't scan the room. He didn't look at the judge or the attorneys. He looked at her. His eyes searched her face, as though trying to find the frightened girl he left in the woods. Instead, he found someone who lifted her chin and stared right back. Her hands trembled in her lap, but she didn't break eye contact. Hart eventually looked away. She had taken something from him that day, his power, and she hadn't even spoken a word. The trial stretched for weeks, filled with testimonies Maya never heard and details her parents shielded her from. But none of it mattered once the jury returned. Guilty on all charges. Maya didn't cry right away. She sat frozen, letting the words settle into her bones. Guilty. It didn't erase what happened. It didn't give her back the days she lost. But it meant the story didn't end with her disappearance. It ended with her survival. One spring morning, nearly a year after the picnic that changed everything, the school invited Maya to a quiet ceremony. No cameras, no publicity. Just students, teachers, and the people who had searched for her in the woods. She hesitated at first. The school grounds still made her chest tighten. But when she walked across the lawn, sunlight warming her shoulders, the applause that rose wasn't loud or overwhelming. It was gentle, respectful. Lila hugged her. Carson stood at her side, still protective in his quiet way. Teachers, who once overlooked warning signs, now spoke with sincere remorse. Maya found herself smiling, small, hesitant, but real. Later, she wandered to the edge of the field where buses usually lined up for trips. The air was warm. The grass is soft. The world calm. She looked toward the distant tree line. A year ago, those trees had swallowed her whole. Now they were just trees. She breathed deeply, letting the moment wash over her. Not fear. Not memory. Just life. When people finally asked her how she survived, Maya never gave dramatic speeches or rehearsed answers. She simply said, "I kept going. I wasn't ready to be a missing girl on a poster." And that truth, simple, quiet, resolute, became the heart of her story. Carson Miller hadn't spoken to anyone since the day Maya came home. He barely made it through classes, drifting through hallways with red-rimmed eyes and a guilt too big for his 14-year-old shoulders. He'd been the one Hart tried to lure first. He'd been the one who ran. He'd been the one who waited too long before making the anonymous call. One afternoon, trembling and pale, he showed up at the Ellis house. When Maya opened the door, he froze, guilt swallowing his words. "Maya," his voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I should have told someone. I should have." Maya stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. "You helped save me." Her words broke him open. Tears spilled down his cheeks. For the first time since the picnic, the weight on his chest eased. And for the first time since her rescue, Maya felt less alone. Two victims of the same man. Two survivors of the same storm. Months passed. Leaves turned gold, then brown, then fell away entirely as winter crept in. And with it came the trial. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood polish and tension. Reporters waited outside like hungry wolves, but inside, everything felt muted. Voices low, footsteps quiet. Maya sat between her parents, heart thudding as Hart was escorted in wearing shackles. He didn't scan the room. He didn't look at the judge or the attorneys. He looked at her. His eyes searched her face as though trying to find the frightened girl he left in the woods. Instead, he found someone who lifted her chin and stared right back. Her hands trembled in her lap, but she didn't break eye contact. Hart eventually looked away. She had taken something from him that day, his power, and she hadn't even spoken a word. The trial stretched for weeks, filled with testimonies Maya never heard and details her parents shielded her from. But none of it mattered once the jury returned. Guilty on all charges. Maya didn't cry right away. She sat frozen, letting the words settle into her bones. Guilty. It didn't erase what happened. It didn't give her back the days she lost. But it meant the story didn't end with her disappearance. It ended with her survival. One spring morning, nearly a year after the picnic that changed everything, the school invited Maya to a quiet ceremony. No cameras, no publicity. Just students, teachers, and the people who had searched for her in the woods. She hesitated at first. The school grounds still made her chest tighten. But when she walked across the lawn, sunlight warming her shoulders, the applause that rose wasn't loud or overwhelming. It was gentle, respectful. Lila hugged her. Carson stood at her side, still protective in his quiet way. Teachers, who once overlooked warning signs, now spoke with sincere remorse. Maya found herself smiling, small, hesitant, but real. Later, she wandered to the edge of the field where buses usually lined up for trips. The air was warm. The grass is soft. The world calm. She looked toward the distant tree line. A year ago, those trees had swallowed her whole. Now they were just trees. She breathed deeply, letting the moment wash over her. Not fear, not memory, just life. When people finally asked her how she survived, Maya never gave dramatic speeches or rehearsed answers. She simply said, "I kept going. I wasn't ready to be a missing girl on a poster." And that truth, simple, quiet, resolute, became the heart of her story. A story no one expected. A story no one forgot. A story that didn't end in the woods, but began there. If you want, I can continue even further, developing the characters as they grow older, explore how the town changes, or follow Maya's journey into advocacy or recovery. Spring drifted into summer, and for the first time in a long while, the world around Maya felt warm instead of threatening. She finished her school year through independent study, easing back into routines at her own pace. Her teachers were careful, gentle, never pushing too hard. Still, every so often she caught the whispers, well-meaning ones from other students who didn't know how to talk to her anymore. "That's her, she's the girl who." Maya grew used to lowering her gaze, pretending she didn't hear. She wasn't ashamed, not anymore, but being a symbol was a strange thing. She felt like a person in private and a headline in public. Some days she wondered if those two identities would ever merge. One humid afternoon in early June, Maya's father called her downstairs. "Something came for you," he said, handing her a small white envelope. The handwriting was unfamiliar, neat, careful, almost artistic. There was no return address. Her mother hovered anxiously as Maya opened it, but what she found inside made her breath catch. "I'm sorry it took me so long to say this. I should have helped you sooner. Thank you for being brave when I wasn't. C.M. Carson." She read the letter twice, feeling something inside her soften. He had apologized already, but this was different. This was a boy trying to forgive himself. Maya tucked the note into her journal. Later that night, she texted him, "Thank you. You were brave too." He didn't respond for 10 minutes. Then, maybe one day I'll believe that. Maya smiled, small but real. In one of her sessions with Dr. Hahn, something happened that Maya hadn't expected. "Tell me," Dr. Hahn said gently, "what do you fear most now?" Maya exhaled slowly. That it could happen again, she admitted. That someone else could pretend to be good and fool everyone. That I won't see it coming. Dr. Hahn nodded. "You're not afraid of the woods or the dark anymore. You're afraid of trust." That truth settled over Maya like a slow, heavy warmth, because it was right. She wasn't scared of parks or shadows. She was scared of believing in people. Dr. Hahn leaned forward, her tone soft and steady. "Trust is something you rebuild, not all at once, but piece by piece. And Maya, you're already doing it." For the first time, Maya felt that recovery wasn't a finishing line. It was a path. The summer festival arrived in town, a yearly event with food stalls, music, and families walking through the park. Maya hadn't gone since she was 10. Her mom suggested staying home. Her dad offered to take her somewhere quieter instead. But Maya surprised them. "I want to go," she said. Crowds still made her nervous. Sudden movements still tightened her chest. But she wanted to try, just to see if the world still felt like hers. They went in the early evening, when the air was warm and the sky glowed orange. Maya walked slowly, taking in the sound of laughter, the smell of grilled food, the distant ring of carnival games. A year ago, she would have felt trapped. Tonight, she felt cautious, but present. She stopped at a booth selling handmade jewelry, her fingers brushing over a silver bracelet with a tiny feather charm. "It symbolizes freedom," the vendor told her with a smile. Something about it made her chest flutter. She bought it. When she slipped it onto her wrist, it felt like a quiet declaration. "I'm still here." It was dusk when Maya turned from a lemonade stand and saw a figure standing a few feet away. Tall, hesitant, hands shoved awkwardly into the pockets of his hoodie. Carson. He looked older than she remembered, still boyish, but with a seriousness that hadn't been there before. His eyes widened when he saw her. I didn't know you'd be here," he stammered. "Me neither," she admitted. They stood there for a moment, the festival lights casting soft flickers across their faces. Carson swallowed. "You look good. Better. I mean, not that you didn't before, I just—" Maya laughed, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in a very long time. "It's okay," she said. "I know what you mean." The tension eased between them as they walked through the festival. He told her about his new therapist, how he still had nightmares, how he was learning to forgive younger, frightened versions of himself. Maya told him about Dr. Han, her progress, her bad days and better ones. For the first time, they didn't talk as victim and witness, but as two teenagers trying to figure out life after something that should have broken them. As the evening sky deepened to blue and lights twinkled above them, Maya realized something important. She wasn't alone in this story. When they finally parted ways at the gate, Carson hesitated before turning to leave. "Maya," he said quietly. "Yeah. I'm glad you came tonight." She felt her heart shift, like a door opening that she'd kept locked for too long. "Me too," she said. Then she walked to her parents with light hitting her in a soft halo, the silver feather on her wrist catching the last glimmer of sunset. It wasn't the end of her fear. It wasn't the end of her healing. But it was the beginning of something she didn't know she'd been waiting for. A life not defined by what happened to her, but by how she rose from it.